So we all know about the illegal immigration happening at the southern border, but what about the illegal crossings that are happening at the northern border?
Our two-part special report revealed migrants were flying to Canada and walking across.
So last year, over 16,000 people illegally entered America from Canada, and a good number of those folks were headed to New York, where America's largest sanctuary city is still offering everyone who makes it here shelter beds, some in former luxury hotels. But with Donald Trump's election, crossing either the southern or northern U.S. borders has become increasingly difficult over the last few weeks. But as you're about to see, some people think they can still make it through.
Border Patrol agents recently rescued 12 citizens of India. Some of them were suffering from severe frostbite. Are you going to New York City?
Yeah.
Last fiscal year, Border Patrol apprehended 564 people on the terror watch list. Of them, 484 were encountered on the northern border.
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police this week launched Black Hawk helicopter patrols to strengthen security along the U.S.-Canada border. The move follows weeks of President Donald Trump threatening to impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico if they do not step up border enforcement efforts.
This is the new reality for agents in the Swanton sector. 295 miles of tough and varying border terrain across 5 northeastern counties of New York, where once it was more common to see deer than people, the border is seeing record illegal crossings.
But now new data tells a different story. While according to the numbers, the decline in people crossing the northern border is evident today, it's clear some are still crossing and maybe hiding in plain sight.
So while smugglers are still offering passage from Canada to New York, President Trump's border crackdowns are making the journey almost impossible. But what nobody's talking about is that securing the northern border, although necessary, that's also going to be almost impossible because it is the longest land border in the entire world. At least that was the theory before President Trump took office and forced Canada to do something about the flow of illegal people and substances entering our country. And Canada is not only increasing their law enforcement presence along the border, but also implementing drones and helicopters to stop unauthorized crossings. However, the bus routes used by those who do manage to cross the border and were uncovered 6 months ago are still in operation. And people are still getting picked up by buses just walking distance from the Canadian border and then driven right here to the Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan, where it's just a short walk over to the Roosevelt Hotel, where newly arrived individuals who may be here unlawfully are given hotel rooms, food, medical care, and humanitarian services. Plus, since New York's shelter system doesn't do background checks, some of those being assisted could be dangerous. Terror watch list suspects or members of gangs we already know live in some of these facilities. Which brings us to the real reason why a secure northern border is so important. Not only do the wrong people use it as an entry point to American sanctuary cities, sometimes things come across that border which do untold amounts of damage to our society, destroying it from within, causing the psychosis and mental distress that's been fueling our growing homelessness crisis for the last several years. But there's a problem, because Canada's only working on border security because Trump forced them to. And New York, America's largest sanctuary city, is undermining border security by harboring those who in many cases are not only dangerous, but prey upon and exploit other lawful immigrants and law-abiding U.S. residents. And as you're about to see, this resistance movement doesn't benefit immigrants, but what it does do is help maintain an unstable situation along the northern border that certainly benefits criminals. So here we are at the Port Authority bus terminal, where every day people from Canada arrive in New York City on buses that travel along routes passing through upstate New York, where they make stops at local businesses and gas stations to pick up passengers, some of whom walked across the border on foot and are hoping to make their way here, where some people believe they can live a normal life while hiding from the U.S. federal government.
Are you going to New York City?
Yeah.
Our two-part special report revealed migrants were flying to Canada and walking across, many of them with the goal of making it to New York City. We looked at federal data that told the story of an increase in Border Patrol apprehensions along the Canadian border over 4 fiscal years.
So that report covers how people fly to Canada, walk across the U.S. border, often with the help of criminals, and then get picked up by buses like this one at random gas stations in upstate New York. And apparently smugglers are still making bank helping people cross the border and come to a sanctuary city, with a recent Post investigation revealing that these guys are making $45,000 to $5,000 a person. And apparently they advertise their services on apps like TikTok, just like what you see here in this picture. Here you've got a group of 7 people at a random gas station somewhere. That's $35,000 in that picture. However, it's not just the Canadian coyotes, as they're called, who are making money off this. The bus companies, they make plenty of money doing this, although what they're doing is not illegal, as buses are allowed to operate and pick people up on the street. And of course, this greatly benefits all of the nonprofits in New York City, who receive both city, state, and federal funding to manage the asylum crisis. On top of that, it benefits the taxis and ride shares that have been spotted picking people up just south of the Canadian border as well. There's a whole economy based around this, which the Trump administration is trying to shut down as fast as possible.
In this picture from Clinton County, New York, you see 2 men with backpacks. It's dated November 9th. This image dated December 1st, 2024. This one taken in the morning. But now new data tells a different story. A 60% decline in Border Patrol apprehensions from October to December of last year.
So over the last year, tens of thousands of people crossed this border and were released into America after being apprehended, whether they applied for asylum or not. And prior to the 2024 election, the odds of successfully getting here were a lot higher. And apparently what people used to do was cross the border and then call 911 to get help from local police reaching a safe, warm location. As you could enter America, give yourself up to authorities, and still be allowed to stay. But things don't work that way anymore. And crossings are plummeting, partly because of the weather, but also because anyone who gets caught is going to get turned around right away. Plus, it's no longer legal to seek asylum in this country if you don't come in through an official point of entry. And this rule change has effectively led to the end of the asylum crisis as we know it. But this brings up a big question. If crossings are down and new crossers can't come here and seek asylum, who exactly are these people and what are they going to accomplish by only being allowed to live in America illegally?
That's not happening anymore.
Major Nicholas Leon is the chief deputy with the Clinton County Sheriff's Office. The agency regularly assists Border Patrol.
It was anticipated that after the election, with some of the different promises from the incoming president.
President Donald Trump.
So look at that. Since November of last year, this sheriff says the entire immigration situation along the U.S.-Canadian border has completely changed. And prior to the 2024 election, you had 2 different groups of people who were coming across the border. The first type were people who were willing to cross the border unlawfully and then turn themselves in, receive an immigration court hearing date, and remain in America while their asylum case played out. But the second group of people are the gang members and the criminals who made money off the first group smuggling them across, who also used this opportunity to bring members of their own criminal organizations into the country for purposes other than pursuing the American dream. And so many criminals came here that the crime rate in Venezuela actually went down. As the local economy's so bad, criminals had no choice but to leave that country and come here to do what they were doing. And we now know that a good number of these individuals ended up in places like New York, where they not only benefit from deportation protection, but also a soft on crime legal system.
President Donald Trump promised deportations on the campaign trail. And since the inauguration, we've seen moves toward that promise, including executive orders, ICE crackdowns, deportation flights, and preparations with plans unfolding to hold alleged criminal migrants in detention on Guantanamo Bay. In a statement...
So the reason things are different now is because this whole Remain in America immigration policy, that's now canceled. We're back to remain in Mexico or whichever country of origin one wants to come in from. And people can still apply for asylum, they just can't do it and wait around inside America. And when the asylum crisis first started, we had stories of skilled professionals that were coming here to seek a new life in America. But now that the asylum crisis is over, anybody coming here, they can't possibly have those ideas in mind. And there is now no pathway, not even one that exists on a technicality, which would allow someone to come here, get work authorization, and start living a normal life while waiting to see if they can stay in the country legally. Which means nobody on their way here right now across the northern or southern borders can possibly care about getting